This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DTV Digest, the podcast which brings you reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema and instead went straight to DVD, Blu-ray, and streaming media. I'm your host, Mike Parkin, and joining me tonight are Richard Oz.
Hello, everyone.
And Stephen Lockridge.
Hello.
We've got an absolute stuffed program for you tonight. We're going to kick off with the Australian sci-fi film Occupation Rainfall. And then to sort of join that, we've got the recent Chris Pratt film called The Tomorrow War. Then we've got a really odd film called Lapsis. Another film that sort of me and Rich sort of been waiting to see called Molly. Then a bit of sword and sorcery with Crazy Samurai 400 versus 1. The Soul Collector from South Africa. Then it's The Dark and the Wicked, and we're going to round up with Witch Hunt. Our short shot this week is Dr. B's Return. So this is I think it's our second animated short that we've had a look at. And then we're going to round off with a very young-looking Frank Grillo in a film called Collision in our DTV throwback. So without further ado, let's crack on. Our first review then is Occupation Rainfall. Following the events of Occupation, the human resistance continues to fight the alien invaders, and tenuous alliances are made with those alien settlers who want a peaceful resolution. A special mission is launched when they get word that the aliens are searching for something called Operation Rainfall, a weapon which may be key to ending the conflict once and for all. Okay, so much bigger and broader than the previous film. This does sort of feel it's like Independence Day but with a message. So let's kick this off with Steve. What did you make of Occupation Rainfall?
Right, well, I just need to say that I didn't know it was a sequel until like halfway through and I looked something up.
You know, when you're on the show when we covered I suppose you might not have been on the show when we covered the.
No, I don't think I was. Well, clearly I wasn't. I've not seen it.
Did you feel like you missed anything, or were you okay with, where you were?
Slightly. At the beginning, I was a bit lost. I'll be honest. But after about 10, 15 minutes, I just thought, sorry, just let it wash over me. Just crack on and see how it works. And actually, I enjoyed it. It was good. I thought the effects were amazing for, a film like this, DCV. There's a couple of little dodgy bits of green screen, but most of it I thought was really, really good. Performances were good. The only part I didn't really like was the humour near the end. I'm not a big fan of is it Ken Jeong?
Ken Jeong, yeah.
Ken Jeong. I'm not a big fan of this. He's all right in the first Tango, and then it gets a bit repetitive, and then a couple of things I've seen him in. The only thing I really like him in really is Community, but apart from that, I think it's quite annoying. But
is it Steve the Alien?
No, to be fair, I mean, how did he manage to get Jason Isaacs in to do that?
I didn't even know it was him until I saw the credits.
Yeah. No, because I'd seen the clip on something a couple of weeks ago. And it's like, oh, Jason Isaacs playing the stoner alien. I'm like, what? And it showed like where he comes in at it, where you first see him. I mean, obviously it's only doing the voice; it's not him actually doing in the makeup and everything. But it kind of lost me a little bit on that. But apart from that, it's a rollicking sci-fi ride. I mean, to me, it was like, especially the ending. It's like Empire Strikes Back, type thing, because where it finishes and where it ends, you need the third part, which. I don't know. Has it been greenlit? Have you heard anything?
Yeah. Well, funny enough, I was tweeting about this earlier today because I went on to their Twitter page, and yes, there is a thing sort of saying, sort of chapter 2 is on its way. And I was like, right. You're damn right. There's a bloody, it's on its way. It better be fucking on its way. You can't just leave us hanging like this, man.
Yeah. But yeah, all in all, it was enjoyable. I enjoyed it.
Rich, how do you get on with Occupation Rainfall?
Yeah, it is like, I mean, the first film was quite a low budget affair. It was mainly like daylight, wasn't it? It was like everyone's sort of in a camp. There's men dressed as aliens, running around, gathering people up, shooting, and whatever.
But you did have that big opening when they saw, you had the Australian rules football match disrupted with the aliens invading and that. So that's what I was.
Really yeah, cool. Yeah. So, but in terms of the scale of it, it is like huge compared to the first one. And it's got that kind of permanent night almost, not entirely, because the different stories develop with different characters and there's stuff taking place in different kinds of locations. But some of it's a bit Harry Potter like almost, with these flying dragon type creatures and things. But a lot of it is like nighttime, which is quite a stark contrast to the first one. It's got that very much war against, like the future war with the Terminator and all that, how everything's always at night and it's always dark and gloomy and that. And so it's got that kind of, Steve said about Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, also very much Marvel. I think, there's that whole kind of thing going on. So I was half expecting a sky beam at the end, I'll be honest, but the most part, the thing I think it slightly gets wrong with that is, it is very Star Wars. It is very Marvelish, in the scale and the adventure and the resistance and all that. But it's got F-bombs like all over the place, so it's not kid friendly, which I think was a mistake. I think this is a film that it should be like a family friendly sci-fi adventure rather than restricting itself to teenagers or old teenagers and stuff. I know kids will watch it anyway, but still it's too much for it to be a 12. I think it's a 15. And apart from that, it would have been all right. The characters, I see, this is why I was interested in how Steve reacted, because I don't remember the first film very well because it's been quite a while. So I was thinking you probably don't need to have seen the first one to come into this. I think it as always with a lot of these things, it helps. But I think there's a lot, is that the exposition, there's exposition and stuff that happens and you're kind of thrown into, I mean, it's Star Wars, it starts with a big exposition scroll and you suddenly with all these characters and stuff, you don't actually need to have seen any of them generally, because that's not the way they're designed. I think that's the way they go for it. But I thought the CGI was excellent, cinematography is really good. Was I that engaged with it? Not as much as some other films. I think it is that kind of resistance tale that we've seen before. The lack of a conclusion, sort of setting up for a third installment, was a bit disappointing. The political the subtext of it, the sort of, it's quite heavy-handed, but the prisoners of war and the allegorical side of it is interesting. But there's a film later we're going to talk about which deals with that sort of thing a whole lot better, I think. But I quite like that they've sort of thrown in some food for thought. I mean, there's the obligatory mistrust of the aliens who they're allied with. That's kind of quite common.
Calling him MAGA all the way through, and then in the end he's like, my brother.
Well, they got the it's kind of that alien nation thing, isn't it? It's you got the two guys, you got the guy teaming up with the alien, and you got the James Caan guy who's just bitterly against them. But will he come around by the end of the movie? Will he learn to open his heart again, then trust somebody? Yeah. And they did too. Big budget movies often have the walking into a room and seeing a spectacular sight and them going wow, and then pausing for the audience to look at it kind of thing. We've had it in like Pacific Rim and whatever, probably in Godzilla and all that sort of thing. So we get it in this movie twice, where they say, there's more going on in here than you realize. Look at what's going on. in this room, and it's not just a room, it's like
cavern. Yeah.
It's like, how did they build a building this big? It's bigger than a hangar. It's bigger than the place they store the Ark. It's it's that kind of Pacific Rim kind of room where it's just massive, and it's like, how on earth could you build a room that would have this much stuff in it? But I thought it was quite funny that they did that twice. The whole Steve the Alien thing that comes in at the end is a bit of, I'm sort of with Steve on I'm not sure about the comedy stuff coming in I mean, there's a little bit of it, but
dudes, we're old. It's not it's not aimed at our level of humor.
No, but I do like the fact
no, I'm not having that. I'm sorry, I watched Wayne's World again last week. You know what I mean? And I'll still love that.
Well, we'll talk offline about Wayne's World, especially specifically Wayne's World 2.
I like Steve the Alien's mustache. I think that's quite fun.
Painfully ripped it off. Okay, guess what my biggest bugbear with this film is?
Is it the in media res?
Would it be the in media res?
It's the fucking in media res. Not so, it's bad enough that in media res is there. It's what they actually use. It's the crappy scene where Ken Jeong sort of going, "Hey guys, this is what it is, and this is the big secret for the film," and then obviously not going to show you, and then it cuts to this awesome action scene where you got people sort of like jumping on board an alien spaceship to rescue some prisoners. You got fighter jets flying overhead, blowing shit up and everything. And at no point during that whole sequence am I going, yeah, but I'm wondering what that Operation Rainfall thing is. I wonder what Ken Jeong could be doing. They
shouldn't. Pointless. They should have just left that. It wasn't necessary, was it?
I mean, completely pointless. Yeah.
That sequence that you come in on.
It's amazing. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, it's big. I mean, that sets the stand. That sets the tone for the whole thing. And you're like, Jesus Christ, they've really gone to town with this. It's
Absolutely.
like compared to the first one, it's wow. It's like mega budget.
It is. Tonally, I think it's a bit up and down. There's the whole allegorical side of it of immigration. Trusting people, trusting foreigners, that sort of thing coming into it. But then you got sort of big adventure stuff like riding around on these sort of alien horses and fighting a giant spider, which was really cool. So you got these quite sort of grown up sort of ideas as well as the sort of more kid friendly adventure stuff. And then quite distressingly, one of the characters gets shot at the end and sort of just left to bleed out on the in the control room while one of the bad guys sort of laughs maniacally. I was like, bloody hell, that's a bit much. But and the way I couldn't believe the way it ended. It's even more bleak than the end of The Last Jedi. Where there's about 20 rebels left in the whole galaxy by that point. That's kind of what it felt like here, because they've sort of like had to evacuate twice and probably lost half the numbers each time. So it's like this constant war of attrition. And I reckon by the start of chapter 2, there's going to be like 5 of them left, and hopefully they're going to figure something out. But it's I mean, hopefully they got some big ideas for the next one, and I demand to see them, basically.
You mentioned the spider thing. It's kind of like a crab combined with a spider, isn't it?
It's interesting the way it moved, like it does that sort of somersault to change directions and stuff. That was really
I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I mean, really well done.
And those horse dragon things and that. I thought the designs and that were really good. The visual effects are top class. The other thing I mentioned, the human villain bloke, is basically the Donald Sutherland character from Outbreak.
Yeah.
That's what he made me think of.
Yeah.
But the cast for us, most of the cast are unknown. There's a couple of familiar faces, obviously.
He's also Alexander Siddig from Skyline 3.
Oh, he's in there as well, is he?
No, but I mean, he's that character,
Oh, I see. No, it's funny you mentioned Skyline. I actually would put these two together. I think this film is quite a bit like Skylines. I mean, the plot obviously. I mean, this one's Earthbound, but there's some definite similarities in the style of the film that they're doing. But I don't know. I liked it, but it didn't give me I don't know. It just wasn't. I wasn't completely sold. I think I wanted a bit more novelty, maybe a bit more something different.
That's interesting.
But I cannot fault the film's quality.
Yeah. What I see for me, what I was looking for was a bit more individuality between the characters, because they were a bit sort of, they kind of all sort of like ran into one, sort of one type basically, which is a shame, and maybe they were sort of relying on you remembering what happened in part one, or who was alive within the part one to sort of continue through. So I was a bit lost with the character side of it, but no. Other than that, I thought this was stonking stuff, really.
Another thing I want to mention is we get an actual villagers with pitchforks sequence.
Yes,
actually with pitchforks.
Yeah, pitchforks.
It's like, come on, it's like it's like so on the nose.
Yeah, pitchforks and Tiki's torches.
Anyway. How did you feel about the way the title card that comes up at the end?
I can't remember. Oh well, it comes up chapter 1 or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it says Rainfall Chapter 1.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, come on! Can't you just use to be continued?
I know.
Like in the old days. Why do you have to make it Rainfall Chapter 1? I mean, it made me think of It. When you watch It, and you thought, oh, it's going to be a complete story, and then you get to the end, and it's like, It. Chapter 1. I was like, you.
So what does that make? Occupation? Is that like the prologue? It's
prologue. That's another thing I hate when they do like, oh, it's Occupation Rainfall 2, but it's actually Occupation 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so scores on the doors for Occupation Rainfall. Steve,
I'll go 7.
Rich.
Yeah, solid 7, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, 3 7s for Occupation Rainfall. Go check it out. Our next review is The Tomorrow War. A family man is drafted to fight in a future war where the fate of humanity relies on his ability to confront the past. God, that's a bit of an enigmatic statement, IMDb. This is the latest film to turn up on Amazon Prime. I think they bought it off Paramount for like in the region of 200 million. How did we get on with this? So Chris Pratt stars. Steve, over to you.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's been getting quite a lot of negative reviews from what I've seen, but I don't have any issues with it, really. I mean, obviously it's cribbing off different films, and you got a bit of Aliens in there, a bit of this in there, a bit of that in there, a bit of Terminator. But the 200 million is up there on the screen. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it's like an old classic blockbuster in a way, It probably doesn't make a lick of sense. But I love Chris Pratt. I especially loved Sam Richardson. Again, this is the second film I've seen him in this week, so I watched Werewolves Within as well, which is great in that. I think he's got big things coming. It was a thoroughly decent blockbuster.
Absolutely. Rich, over to you.
Funnily enough, this starts basically the same way that Occupation Rainfall did, with an in media res. And it
is it?
Yeah.
Did it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remind me. No, it didn't.
No, it did. It started at the party with the football match.
No, it started with him falling out of the sky.
Oh, that's right. It does. You're right.
And then it says 28 years earlier.
Yeah. That's right. He falls in the swimming pool. You're right.
Yeah.
So in Occupation Rainfall, it took 90 minutes to get back to that point. In this one, it actually only takes half an hour. So that's kind of the difference here. But yeah, there is a the film. It is interesting that it starts at the FIFA 2022 World Cup, which is happening at Christmas, and it's Brazil, I think, playing. They I don't know what they're quite vague about what's actually going on, and how far through they are in the World Cup and stuff like that. So I don't know why they did that, because soccer's not even a massive thing in America, as far as I know. But anyway, that's what they chose to use, which was curious.
To be fair, using the World Cup, I know
Mm.
it's in America, but it gives it more of a worldwide appeal.
Yeah,
really.
exactly. Yeah.
Give it something
Yeah,
like the
could do.
Super Bowl, you know, it's
I,
not
th-
massive
I,
over it.
yeah, I think the idea was just that they wanted a world, something, a worldwide sort of phenomenon event that they could
Yeah.
sort of tune into.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else, Major League Baseball, American football, it's obviously going to be internal.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you got it's one of those films with a media montage for exposition, get you up to speed on everything that's been going on, because it takes place in two times. It takes place in the future and it takes place in our present, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And we establish Chris Pratt's character is a high school science teacher who also happens to be ex-special forces, which is going to come in handy. He's got daddy issues and all that sort of stuff. And then they introduce this whole thing about the draft. There's a Vietnam kind of allegory stuff sort of happening. A little bit of it made me think of actually a few different films came to mind. There was the film Chronicle 2067 we watched a few weeks back, or a couple of months back, where they had a similar thing where there was a problem in the future, and they were like, "We need you to go to the future to try and fix this problem." In that case, it was just sending one guy. In this one, it's sending everybody. Cause everybody's getting drafted, and I liked it a lot. I was not really that interested in it. I'm not a Chris Pratt fan. I thought, it just looks generic, kind of thing. But I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was really good. The plot kept me on my toes. It moves around. You go in one direction, then it shifts gears, goes in a different direction, and it does that a few 2 or 3 times. The aliens which are kept, completely off screen for quite a while. And they actually tell the people, actually, we're not even going to show you what they're like because you'd be too scared to go and fight them. And they are fantastic. They are brilliantly designed monsters, some of the best. I mean, this goes basically full on horror movie for quite a part of it. They're really nasty, scary. I couldn't watch this. This isn't. I think kids will be scared of watching this. I think. Up to a certain age, anyway. They're called the white spikes. It does get very aliens at times. The action is really good. The whole execution I thought was excellent. Reminded me of Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise movie.
Yep.
Because I think there are some similarities there as well. Because
lots.
Except instead of that was like a Groundhog Day kind of thing. This handles the time travel stuff in a bit of a different way. But the time travel stuff in this doesn't make sense because it gets to a point where you're like, well, hang on a minute. if that has done that, then that can't happen. Which is the old paradox kind of thing. But then again, we forgave Back to the Future and stuff. So I think we can forgive this. So yeah. How did you get on with it, Mike?
I really enjoyed this a lot. I'm not. I mean, the thing with the design of the aliens, they're very similar to the ones in the film The Great Wall. With
oh really? I haven't seen it, so I can't comment.
Yeah,
I'm not seeing that.
And I'm pretty sure that there's another film. I got a feeling there is a computer somewhere with a an alien design which they've sort of just tweaked little bits for sort of various films. But even so, the thing with the spikes works really well. Chris Pratt was really good in this. The beginning. You can tell that as a character, he's a bit sort of lost at sea. He wants to do something more with his life, and then when they sort of land in the future, and it's like immediately they've been told you're on a rescue mission, and he just instantly sort of snaps back into that role. You can tell the character. He is back in his element, sort of thing. He knows what he's doing. He's on sort of firm ground. And that whole sort of sequence I thought was superb. Trying to rescue these scientists and that.
Well, also the scene where he lands, where they land, is horrific because they don't land where they're supposed to.
No,
so they're all
supposed to land like
loads of people just die straight away.
Supposed to land like 5 foot above the ground or something, and then it turns out that their portal was interrupted, and they're sort of like hundreds of feet in the air. And it's just by pure chance, this sort of, some of them land in this swimming pool on top of a hotel.
Whereas other people are like hitting the side of the building and everything. Oh, it's horrific.
Yeah. So we got Sam Richardson, as you mentioned, Steve, brilliant in Werewolves Within. Really good here as well. As a sort of sort of comic relief, but not not as broad as what we saw in Occupation Rainfall, for example. Also happy to see Yvonne Strahovski, who was in Chuck series from about 10 years ago now.
And Dexter, and she's done loads.
Was she in that as well?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, she was pretty strong in this. It was interesting. As the film was
what about J.K. Simmons, who's like Jack?
J.K. Simmons, he looks really good in this. And
he's always
daddy issues. Yeah, daddy issues.
I've never seen him. I've never seen him looking like that. So,
you've never seen him in a vest before, so there you go.
No,
probably.
No.
As the film was going on, we were sort of watching it, and I'm sort of going, "Hang on a minute, surely, even if they sort of defeat the aliens in the future, they're still going to invade." So yes, rest assured you're going to defeat them sort of in 30 years time, but you're still going to go through like 10 years of hell, before you get to that point. So it was interesting the way they sort of that they managed to sort of circumvent that and come up with a solution.
I could kind of see that happening, how they did it and stuff like that, and how they got around that. But again, it works, for me. I've had a lot of people slagging it off, and it's like, just go with it. It is a bit of fun. It's not, it ain't Shakespeare. It's just a decent, fun sci-fi action. It's Independence Day crossed with whatever.
Exactly.
I tell you one film that it made me actually feel like seeing, because it seems like it might have some thematic similarities, is Oblivion with Tom Cruise, which I've never wanted to see.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe there's a little bit of a...
There's a bit of that. And again, that the creature design, you may... I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I think there is a sort of similarity there. I'll tell you another film worth checking out if you haven't seen it, which is on Netflix. It's a film called Spectral.
Oh, yeah, you've mentioned that one before.
Yeah.
That's got sort of similar ideas to this, obviously, but all set within one timeline. I thought this was just sort of solid, really.
What did you think when it went kind of the Thing towards the end?
It was a good change of location. It sort of mixed it up a bit. So I think a lot of people, it's quite funny. My son's got this thing about sort of people, noble sacrifices and stuff like that, and I think a few people are sort of a bit too keen to die. A bit save yourselves, I'll blow myself up, and sort of, it's like, you didn't necessarily have to do that. You could have legged it. Yeah.
I liked seeing there was an actress, Mary Lynn Rajskub, who's Chloe. I think Chloe from 24.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so it was great seeing her. But I think she's one of those characters who does.
She is. Yeah. she, it's just silly stuff. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, I was reading something before. It's basically sort of script writers who sort of go, well, got no need for this character anymore. Just kill him off. Even if it makes no sense to do so.
Did you know this was from the director of the Lego Batman movie?
No,
you can't imagine anything completely different.
Well,
I think he used to do like Robot Chicken and stuff.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, that does explain, the clarity of some of the action scenes. So, yeah, good on him. Cool. All right. Scores on the doors for The Tomorrow War. Steve.
I'm going to go an 8 on this.
And Rich.
Me too. 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, I'm going to give it a 7. It is solid entertainment. It's on Amazon Prime. I mean, there's nothing really to complain about.
Mike, which one's your favourite out of this and Occupation Rainfall?
Now you're asking. I think this purely because of the characters. A bit more familiar with the actors, I guess. I think that sort of gives it a bit more of an edge. Whereas I think with Occupation of Rainfall, what you don't have with the Tomorrow War is sort of nuance with the aliens. They are actual characters here. I mean, they do sort of clarify something in the Tomorrow War film about the nature of the aliens. The white spikes, because
but they're completely different, aren't they?
But you're watching
it.
Because you're watching it, you're probably thinking, how the hell did these guys fly a spaceship?
Yeah. But then again, I thought that about The Thing and stuff. A lot of different versions. He's like, how do you get these sort of weird spider creatures or something? Like or Alien. Well, in Aliens, actually, it was they were inside the pilots or whatever, weren't they? In that, but maybe that was the. I think actually, no, I don't want to mention any. No, because I think they kind of did a similar thing with this. I don't know if the aliens were actually.
They did.
It's cribbed from Prometheus almost.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't.
That's fine. It's there. Anyway, so what we said, 2 8s and a 7 for the Tomorrow War. Our next film is Lapsis. In the near future, there is a step change in technology which makes quantum computing available to everyday people. When his younger brother requires expensive medical treatment, Ray decides to try his luck in the very lucrative new profession of cabling, where people lay cables between the quantum network's giant cube nodes. However, he finds out that this new industry is just as prone to abuse, both by scammers and by the main companies alike. Okay, so Rich, this is a weird one, right?
Yeah. How did you get on with it?
At first, I just didn't know what to make of it. I kind of got into it eventually. It's a weird one because there's no real antagonist as such. It's basically this guy, this sort of everyman who, he kind of cheats to get into this industry. And he ends up lumbered with this medallion that belonged to somebody else, which sort of unlocks various goodies for him, and raises the suspicions of the other workers who are just starting out. It had some good ideas, I think, but the way it ends, I was just like scratching my head.
Yeah, so I was drawn in straight away. I thought the sort of, I guess it's one of those films you sort of, when they refer to like a 5 minutes into the future kind of thing, it's like very relatable. But there's this big thing that's happened, but it's very ordinary, and it's become quite a mundane thing. And this guy is almost a man out of time. He's kind of behind the times with the technology. He's a bit of a technophobe. He's certainly not sure. He doesn't want Wi-Fi in his house and all that sort of stuff. But I thought he was a great character, really, really engaging, very interesting. Not a perfect guy, but very much an everyman who you can get behind. And he gets himself into this situation. He's only trying to do the right thing for the most part. He's a good man.
Yeah.
He does some things wrong, but he's no worse than most of us, I'd say. And that's what I quite liked about him. I thought he was, very different, and he's quite different to most movie sort of protagonists. He's got this kind of, people say, oh, you're a bit like a gangster, sort of, like an Italian gangster sort of character. He's got that kind of thing going on, and they say, he sort of mentions that he's very working class, is what I'm trying to say. It's like working class Italian, average Joe, but he kind of gets caught up in this thing, and it kind of he kind of becomes a Johnny Mnemonic kind of character in this kind of landscape, which is, it's the same kind of thing we've seen before in those sort of Johnny Mnemonics and whatnot, about the sort of the resistance story again, sort of coming up and sort of fighting against big business and whatnot, but it never reaches out too far. It sort of it keeps its feet on the ground. And I was reminded of Code 8 specifically, but not the Code 8 movie, because I think the movie took it in a different direction to what I would have liked. I think the short film, where it sets up the sort of allegorical stuff, was more grounded. And I also think Runaway, the Tom Selleck movie, where that's kind of a, you know, it's basically the world we live in, but there just happen to be these robots around and stuff. And in, you know, they've got these, you know, the world he enters, the cabling world, is just like ridiculously mundane. You know, it's just people traipsing across forests, pulling cables around, and they got little robots that they've got to try and out. I thought that was all done really well. I thought the vagueness of the, you know, because there's only, you know, it's the whole quantum thing and the cabling, and you know, it's 10 years into it and stuff. They've got to be fairly vague about it because it's an unknown quantity. They don't want to get drowned down in the I don't want to
get bogged down in the details. So the idea is that you know, this quantum technology relies on this vast network, which they have these sort of giant cubes sort of stationed around the country, you know, in remote places, and they need people to run cables between them over sort of, you know, difficult terrain and things like that. So, and they earn a lot of money for it. You know, the first one he does, you know, is like $600, I think, isn't it? But so one of the more difficult ones he does later is worth over 100,000, you know, for like 2 days' work or something. So you know, there's a lot of people involved in doing this, and it sort of has its own sort of cottage industry off the back of it.
Where most of the people are not getting those big jobs, though, are they? It's because he's kind of he's found himself in this position where he's in this because somebody previously took advantage or manipulated things. He's reaping the benefit of that, and he doesn't sort of he does question it, but then he's like, well, okay, I'll go with it. I need money because he's trying to sort out his brother, which is a whole subplot with, you know, the merits of the, you know, is the illness that which is called Omni, is this a real thing, and are the treatments of it legitimate? And, you know, he's kind of caught up in a bit of a scam kind of thing there.
It does it does look and sound like a scam, doesn't it? The whole medical procedure that they're running for him is absolutely ridiculous.
I really like the film a lot, but I have two major problems with it. And one of them was that everything is massive coincidences. Like he happens to run into this person who knows such and such, and he happens to run into another person, and that person just happens to be, you know, X or whatever. It's just, and then it leads toward the conclusion, which is anticlimactic, you know, I mean, it does set something in motion, the end, but it's not a satisfactory ending. It just kind of ends.
Exactly, and there's been a lot of talk online about this film, and you know, its stance on sort of workers' rights and things like that. And the interesting thing for me is the fact that, you know, of the robots, because as these guys are sort of doing these cabling jobs, and they're being sort of tracked by the company with the GPS and everything, and the GPS tells them when they can have a break, and that sort of thing. And
it's basically Amazon, isn't it?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And then you got these robots which are also laying cable in the same area, you know, and if they overtake you and get to the next cube before you do, then it nullifies the work you've just done. So you know, you're encouraged in sort of speech marks to, you know, pick up the pace and get ahead of the robots. And you know, there's some interesting sort of get-arounds that people have come up with. But if you're caught tampering with one of the robots, then you're going to get arrested, you know, and thrown off the program. The woman you mentioned, you know, she's got an interesting way of solving it, you know, and he tries to emulate that, but he just does a Homer Simpson and smashes it. You think, oh, he's got to do the same thing she did. Oh no, he just smashed it. And that was the silly thing as well, because, you know, by the time he'd run up to it, he could have just kept on running and got to the cube before the robot did. You know, he was clearly sort of ahead of it. Anyway,
but do you echo my sentiment that the ending just doesn't really go anywhere? Really you get like characters introduced, there people are talking about stuff, and you expect there's going to be like some big like finale,
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not there.
I was like, what did I miss? Did I miss something? It's all very strange. It's all very, even the company behind the robots can just kind of go, oh well, it's weird. It's a very.
But I do love it. Apart from that,
it's a very art house kind of film. It is.
Yeah, but it's very accessible. It's not Primer.
No,
exactly. But it's it's kind of a relative of that. It's not the Tomorrow War. it's definitely more. It's not even Code 8. It's kind of leaning towards Code 8, but it's much more grounded and. I think it is really interesting. I think I would encourage people to see it. I think it's really worth seeing.
Definitely.
I think there's those two major problems with it.
Because it is just so different to what we've covered. Now, Rich, we in the past we've looked very, specifically at sort of the way certain films have been marketed in the UK, because sometimes they go in a complete different direction to the way it's been marketed elsewhere. And this is definitely the case here, because if you look at the US poster for this, it looks like a film put out by Gravitas Pictures. It's a Sundance style, a film festival darling kind of image on there, and then you have the UK poster, which is this sort of really ominous, sort of dark purple, and blue, sort of typical sort of thing. The color coding we've seen a lot for sort of horror films and techno thrillers and things like that.
Yes.
And it's got this sort of tagline, and it's along the lines of your life belongs to the machine.
Well, they've added this little robot sitting on top of the
exactly, on top of the cube with a
which
red
never
light.
happens in
of course not
in the movie.
But
I would say that yes, the original poster does have that art out. It's got the sort of loopy lettering and stuff, but they have basically kept the central image of the poster.
Oh, the cube, the cube with
essentially
all the cables.
The same.
But
they both
just
got
the
cube
colouring and then the change in the font and everything.
Well, they try to make it look quite almost scary, don't they? It's like it's a techno, like more of a techno.
The machines are taking over, man. It's that sort of thing.
It's described on Signature Entertainment's website as Black Mirror meets Bird Box. And I haven't seen Black Mirror.
Bird Box. Everyone dies in Bird Box. Is it got people sort of blinded and killed by monsters? So no, it's not.
Isn't Bird Box? Does Bird Box take place in the woods?
Yes.
Could that be where they're coming from?
Possibly, but that's a big reach. That's a real stretch. That is.
But Black Mirror is kind of loose sci-fi ideas, Twilight Zone kind of stuff.
It's Black Mirror is sort of like Twilight Zone version of technology, isn't it? It's looking at various different types of technology and sort of how they can be sort of twisted and dark. So that side of it I could see, but no way is this anything like Bird Box. Anyway, Rich, how are you going to score it on that basis?
I am. I want to go an 8, but because of those major problems that I've got with it, I'm going to have to keep it a 7.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to join you on a 7. I wasn't sure about this to begin with, but it grew on me. Once he turns up at the expo and learns a bit more about the cabling job and everything, I thought it was a lot more involving. So yeah, definitely a 7 out of 10. Go check it out. Our next film is Molly. Molly is a gifted young woman trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. When she comes to the aid of a young girl, her special powers are revealed, making her a target for the local warlord. So this is, although it was made beforehand, this is actually a sequel to a film that we covered about a year ago, Rich, maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think this was made first, and then Kill Mode was the prequel.
That's right, yeah.
Or at least not necessarily a prequel, but it was a film that was made which then featured the same character.
The same character, yeah.
Yeah.
Same actress, I think.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. Steve, were you confused by this? I mean, as it is a sort of sequel in name, but I don't think you really needed to know.
Yeah. Yeah, a bit. It just seemed like this girl was being chased in this, like say, a post-apocalyptic world, but she kind of had these powers. Now, I don't, like you say, if it is a sequel, I don't know if that was explained more in this one, because it was basically just kind of a little bit like Stranger Things, where she's in a black room and gets an injection.
Yeah.
And then suddenly gets these powers that, again, they're not really explained. If you know, it just happens now and again in the film.
No. Well, I will say this was the first film. The next film was in which they
the prequel,
fleshed about. Yeah, it was like 3 years between them. So this was the first appearance of the character. They didn't do any real exposition kind of thing. You're just launched right into this sort of post-apocalyptic world, basically.
Yeah. To be honest, I didn't really get on with this. I thought the majority of the acting was terrible, especially the warlords and his crew. I thought the girl playing Molly was actually quite good. But again, it's one of them, nothing much really happens. You know, they're just trying to get her to be in these fights. And then it goes on this half-hour supposed one shot at the end, which again was quite good for the money that they've got, but the story didn't really grab me at all. It was just, I don't know, there was nothing there. It was basically, we just want you to join these cage fights. And to be fair, the cage fights were pretty terrible. Even, you know, they drug in these people up just to fight, turn them into zombies to fight, basically. It kind of reminded me of like Mad Max Thunderdome, but nowhere near as good. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Just very, very poor.
Rich, I mean, we reviewed Killzone a while ago.
Yes.
This is a lot cheaper, as to be said. That film had some, quite big sort of special effects work in it. This is a bit more sort of low key. How did you get on with it?
Yeah, I've been looking forward to seeing this for a while, and it's quite a distinctive. It is a distinctive film. It's not set. It doesn't do any particular world building. You're just kind of there. It doesn't specify at what point of the future it is or anything, or even if it's Earth, it could be another planet. We don't know, but it's you might correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I thought the lack of clarity didn't bother me too much. It kind of you're kind of there, it's and the character is interesting, the way they dress. It's got that kind of punky sort of aesthetic of like something like Turbo Kid, where they're just using whatever's around, so she's dressed up. I mean, you could relate the character to like a Hunger Games or something like that, because she is quite she's a very resilient, and also Eleven from Stranger Things. She's a very resilient character. She's got a bow and arrow. She's very adept at taking care of herself. She doesn't really use her powers very much. They kind of come out at moments of
like
frustration.
Reflex,
it's like a reflexive thing. She doesn't really control them so much. The performance is good. There's not a huge amount of dialogue really. It's a Dutch film, I believe, shot in English.
Yep.
The main reason I was excited about seeing it was on the poster I recognised the forts that appear in the movie, which are the Red Sands forts, which are off the coast. They're in the estuary, but you can access them from the coast here in Kent. And so I actually put out a tweet ages ago saying, are they those? Because I couldn't believe that a low budget film crew from the Netherlands had come all the way over and gone all the way out to these forts to film them, and they did. The final act of the movie, which, as you say, is that sort of continuous action sequence, it starts at that point. So they actually, there's a bit where she rows the boat and she climbs up the fort, and then it's into the the set that they've created for that particular location, which is all a very, very enclosed. So, although they probably didn't have a lot of money, but actually I think that kind of works. It's, it's a very contained environment. There's some survivors, and he's running. It's a very carnival-esque sort of death match kind of thing that he's running. They don't have money or anything, so they sort of gamble for bullets and stuff like that. It's almost trauma, but it's not trauma, but it's veering towards that sort of insanity. But yeah, it's more, it is kind of mad. It's that Mad Maxiness, isn't it, that you were mentioning before. So I liked it. I thought it was all right. I think it's got its own identity. It's very different from Kill Mode. Kill Mode's a completely different beast. But it was quite interesting that they returned to that character. The whole the thing with the continuous, almost one-shot action scenes is something that also reappeared there. In this case, it's at the end of the movie. In Kill Mode, I think it happens at the beginning.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I don't think, the director or directors may correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure that the final half an hour was not done in one go, that it was a series of long takes edited together carefully, because there's lots of moving towards a black screen and then
someone
coming onto the next bit, or something like that. There's lots of devices that we've seen used to sort of, in like Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning and stuff, to put these pieces together. That is to no detriment. I still think it's a fantastic achievement to have done that, and I think actually that works well. It's a half an hour action conclusion to the story. I mean, and it never gets boring. I don't think. I thought it worked well.
I totally agree. I bought the Blu-ray of this a couple of months ago, and it'd been sitting on my shelf ever since, waiting for me to watch it. And then, of course, now it's on Prime. So naturally, I watched the Blu-ray version, of course. Dug that out.
When it's got those colours, it's got the vibrant colours.
Yeah, it's got
so
a very sort of vivid sort of colour scheme to it. I think I thought the choreography was really good. I just think they could have helped themselves by just undercranking it a little bit, so it would have been a little bit more sort of sped up.
I noticed that. There's one scene where she's fighting the woman with like the robot arm.
Yeah.
And literally, you could tell they'd filmed it slow and sped it up.
I think they need to sort of do a bit more. Basically, they could have, so some of it just
that's
looks.
What I mean. You could tell that it was like they'd done it as like a blocking. It's like a rehearsal.
Yeah.
And they just thought, well, we can't really do it. We'll just speed it up and stick it in there. And it took me out of it as well in a way.
That's a shame.
I mean, I wasn't. To be fair, I wasn't dead invested.
Not totally into it, but
yeah, but.
No, I like that location. The sort of those structures in the sea. Thought that worked really well. The actual sort of characters didn't get a lot of meat to them. And I'm kind of with Steve with the sort of the main bad guy. The idea of someone sort of being that sort of manic, sort of ruling over this sort of group of people. I just can't see it. It's just too comic booky, and it doesn't fit. It loses its a little bit of realism, a little bit of greatness.
I'll tell you what I thought of of this film as being. It's kind of like a spin-off for a Doctor Who companion. Molly seems like she could have been, like Ace from the Sylvester McCoy era. Yeah. So it's almost like this is I know Ace and Molly are completely different, but if they did that kind of, I know there are sort of spin-offs and stuff out that have done that kind of thing, but she feels like she could have been a character who traveled with Doctor Who. She's landed on this planet, and she's kind of been left there, and she's
there's various characters. I mean,
it's got that colourfulness of it's got that kind of over the topness of old sort of Doctor Who. I think
there's various characters who've sort of been lost by the Doctor. For Billie Piper's character got lost in a different dimension, and I've forgotten the name now. Who's the ginger one? Who's the ginger one?
Bonnie Langford?
No, later, much later. Jesus, no, the one in
I don't know the new stuff.
Amy Pond, Karen Gillan.
Yeah, Karen Gillan. See, her
Yeah.
character and her partner got lost in a different dimension as well, or something. On a hell planet. So yeah, you're right. There is that sort of scope for sort of Doctor's companions to be sort of lost and sort of have their own adventures.
But do you see what I mean? In terms of
yeah.
this film, it feels like it could have been that her character could have.
Yeah.
This is like a traveling in. It's
or
not necessarily our world. It's like a.
They could have
another
easily
dimension.
ended this. They could have easily ended this with the TARDIS appearing at the end. But aesthetically, what this film reminded me of is a film by Ross Bias called Warrioress, which is.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Well, yeah, I don't
should
think
see it.
Yeah, but that has got a similar feel because that film in particular is set so far into the future that everything is ruined. And it has that sort of same use of like a fort and things, as sort of a backdrop, which is really.
That's interesting because I thought it was a historical thing. I didn't.
No. Well, no, it's actually set much further in the future.
Yeah.
Where, so it's a mixture of sort of different technologies, a bit like Beowulf, with Christopher.
Yeah.
But on a smaller scale. Anyway, so I enjoyed this. It's a low budget film. It's hasn't got a lot of bells and whistles, but it does have this really cool. It's got good fight scenes. It's got some good choreography, as you said.
Ambitious,
really
ambitious long takes and stuff.
There's a whole bit where she loses her goggles, and you're really worried for her because, oh my God, she almost stood on her goggles. There's all this sort of stuff going on. Really, really good. So, Rich, how are you going to score this?
I think it's interesting enough to be. I think it's a 7 out of 10.
Mm-hmm. Steve,
I'm going to go 6.
Going to 6. I'm going to go a 7 as well. Go check it out. Our next review is Crazy Samurai 400 versus 1. Following the defeat of their champion at the hands of renowned swordsman Musashi Miyamoto, the Yoshioka clan tries to lure him into a trap where 100 samurai and 300 retainers and mercenaries are waiting to ambush him. However, things don't go according to plan, and the Yoshioka clan faces extinction at the sharp edge of Musashi's blade. So this is, other than a bit at the start and a bit at the finish, it is basically just one long, unedited fight scene where he takes on 400 bloody people. I know this is going to divide us, divide opinions on this one. So, Steve, let's test the waters with you. How did you get on with Crazy Samurai?
Bored shitless. To be fair, absolutely. Yeah. It's the same thing for an hour and a half. It does nothing. I mean, don't get me wrong, on a technical level, it's great. On a physical level, the guy
Sakaguchi,
amazing, fantastic. But it's literally him being surrounded by about 30 guys, knock him in the head, stabbing him, and that's it for the whole film. And I sat down, I'm watching it. I'm 10 minutes in, I'm thinking, no, it can't be all this. It's got to change. It's got to be something different. No, it's just going through the same thing over and over and over again. If it was a short, it'd be amazing. Yeah, but because it is literally just one long shot, and like I said, it's great that they've had the balls to do it. Some of it, again, they're getting stabbed, and to get out a shot, they're running behind the camera to get out a shot.
Yep.
So they're not falling over bodies that should be lying everywhere, and it didn't work for me at all. Mm-hmm. I was generally bored all the way through.
Okay, Rich. Now we know already that these sort of sword movies aren't your cup of tea anyway. And given what Steve's just said about the monotony of this, how did you get on with it?
Well, I don't think I wouldn't compare this to The Swordsman, for example, in terms of a period, swordplay movie with with a lot of plot and all the historical stuff. This is it doesn't really, the historical setting is almost arbitrary, really. I mean, once you get into the action, it's you could be watching the Crazy 88, in Kill Bill. It doesn't make that doesn't have any bearing really on my view of the movie. But I would say you can have too much of a good thing, and unfortunately for me, this didn't work as a satisfying film experience either, because I want more. I mean, the thing with Molly was it built towards that fantastic, last half hour of action, seamless action, single camera kind of stuff. In this one, you've got as you say, you've got the setup, which is traditional multi-camera or multi-shot, traditional editing, and then you work into the sequence part of the film, and it's too much. I think all you can do is marvel at the technical accomplishment and sort of look for the cuts, which I thought I saw one about 5 minutes into the fight. There seemed to be a bit where there was a move to a black section or something that
somebody
could have accommodated a cut.
There's one bit where somebody moves right in front of the camera.
Yeah.
But elsewise,
I don't think it actually was a cut. I think it's just they got in the way.
That's fair.
Yeah, I thought they put that in there just as a test to sort of see whether or not they needed it or not. They may have planned other ones, but I think it was just there, and they thought, no, actually, this is going well. Let's just crack on with it.
Yeah, because the rest of the movie, I couldn't see anything. But that was what I was focused on. I was focused on, wow, isn't this incredible how they've managed to do this? Did they really do this? Is that possible? How would they have done it with the technical accomplishments and everything of it?
But that's the thing. There's nothing else to concentrate on.
No, there isn't. And that's what
there's no dialogue,
like.
there's no plot, there's no character, there's nothing. It's literally just swordplay for 70 odd minutes.
And I'll shift to the end and say it's actually the more traditional film sequence, like the one at the beginning. It's it's that sequence at the end which I liked more. It's like it wasn't the grand centerpiece of the whole thing, the whole point of the movie. I enjoyed that less. It's because there was too much. I mean, there's a film called Broken Path which Johnny Young Bosch did, which has some amazing stuff in it. It's a really great stunt showcase film. It's nearly non-stop action, but for me, it's too much. I disengage. I love action movies. I'll tell you what I would prefer to, take these long take action sequences, things. I would rather watch an hour and a half of short films using that device than to just watch this one. Because I want to see more invention and variety. I want a bit of and if I can't have plot or changes in locations and stuff, if I can't have a proper story, if I can't have a Molly, basically something like that, if I can't have a Molly, give me 13 or whatever 10-minute movies, and that would work for me better. But Mike, I'm really interested to hear what you think.
Okay, I got notes. Okay. So, just as sort of an aside, this is directed by Yuji Shimomura, who worked with Tak Sakaguchi on their previous film called Reborn. Now, I watched Reborn at one of the Fighting Spirit film festivals a few years back, and there is a huge sequence set in a forest where there's a main character who's working his way through all these bad guys. It's not one take, it's a series of little sort of fight scenes, and it just goes on forever. I fell asleep. So,
I'd seen the previous film he did, the first one with Tak Sakaguchi called Death Trance.
Oh yeah,
which was the one that reunited him with Kentaro Segal, Steven Seagal's son, because they made their debut with Versus, which was kind of where Tak Sakaguchi sort of really, came out of nowhere. First film, stamped his, this is a guy to watch, and that was 21 years ago now.
Oh yeah,
and but Death Trance I remember nothing about, so it wasn't a film that made much. I mean, Versus did. That was Ryuichi Kitamura, wasn't it? I think, but Death Trance didn't, and I haven't seen Reborn, so I can't compare on that one.
But anyway, so Tak Sakaguchi is amazing. I wasn't bored with this at all. I was sort of basically watching it for the technical skill of both sort of Tak and sort of the poor cameraman who's having to keep up with him. As well, it was like watching a marathon. You just sort of wondering how the hell he's keeping going all the way through this. So
they use some nice sort of asides, don't they, to sort of give him a rest break.
They give him one rest break.
Yeah.
They give him,
he stops for a drink every now and again.
Yeah. Well,
there's a couple, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's that. I mean, and that sort of thing I can see, because I can believe that the character Musashi would have scoped the place out, and he would have sort of hopefully sort of set a few things up for himself. A few drinks of water, a change of sword, for example, as he does at one point. So
why does he spit on a sword?
He's got calluses, man. He's been hitting people, constantly with his hands.
No, but why does he spit on the sword blade?
The actual sword blade, I don't know, just for effect. Maybe to get. I didn't understand that. Yeah, because he spits water on his hands and stuff.
Yeah.
Imagine. So from a technical skill point of view, there's a lot to admire, but the issue is that the longer this fight scene goes on, the more the flaws sort of build up, basically. So, for example, probably a good third of the people he's fighting literally just charge at him with a sword above their head, going they don't even bother sort of trying to swing at him or anything. It's almost like the deliberately holding the sword out of his way so he can get a clear shot of their stomach.
They also do that thing, that old cliche of waiting around and attacking him one at a time.
Attacking one at a time, but and I'm thinking, okay, well that might be a samurai thing. It might be a sort of honor code. Who knows?
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, because no one attacks him from the back or anything like that. It's all sort of frontal attacks. So there's basically two main attacks. One is a good slash across the belly, and the other is a sort of smash across the head. So obviously there is definitely one moment at least where he hits somebody on the head and their wig slips. So because obviously, like in the film On Back with Tony Jaa, his debut film, you had all the stunt people wearing protective gear on their heads because he kept smashing elbows into their cranium and stuff. So they're wearing headgear and then like a weird hat or afro or something on top. And a lot of the guys are doing that here as well. And there's definitely one moment at least where you see this when he gets hit on the head, the wig slips across his eyes.
I think that's more than forgivable, though. I mean, you've got much more complexly edited films that have terrible goofs in them. And I didn't spot any. I didn't spot that at all. I mean, that didn't catch my eye. So I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. No, I mean it's fine. I can see its flaws for sure.
What did you think of because the way they tried to give variety to the way they're shot, which I quite liked. And there was one scene where they pull right back.
Yeah,
they're really far away, and I quite liked that scene. I thought that was quite novel and interesting. That stood out. I remember that.
They do some good things with the camera work. It's sometimes coming in really close. Sometimes, as you say, sometimes sort of pulling further back. There's a sequence where he's allowed to go off screen for 2 minutes because we get this argument between two samurai. One of them sort of like complaining about the futility of what they're doing. The other one starts goading him about you just want to go home and screw your wife sort of thing. And that goes on for about 2 minutes, and you can imagine sort of poor old Tak Sakaguchi. It's like having his shoulders rubbed down and having sort of like Red Bulls sort of fed into his veins as he So, waits for his next thing because you can see the physical exertion of what he's doing. Poor guy's not acting very much, really. He really is that shattered.
And how many times must they have run through it? You've got to think of. It's astounding, really. You think the preparation that must have been involved.
There's a thing though. I mean, I think there's some sort of coding going on because as I said, some of them are wearing sort of headgear and sort of wigs. Some of them sort of got extra padding around their waist, around their sort of chest. So it's a case of like, well, if he's going to run at you, then you're going to slash his way, slash him through the chest. If that guy, I think there's little routines they learn, and it's a case of like, if he's going to engage, then this is what we're going to do, sort of thing.
Yeah.
There are a couple of other bits. For example, there'll be a whole bunch of them, and he sort of defeats them, and then there'll be a big boss kind of character will turn up.
Say what I was thinking, honestly. It was like watching somebody play a video game.
Yeah, it's like playing Double Dragon or something.
Streets of Rage or something. Yeah,
he defeated all the sort of minions, and then this other guy turns up. So the guy who's like he's sort of bare chested and he's carrying these sort of chains with hooks on the end. He's an act. He's a real life person. That Musashi actually did fight at some point. I don't think he really did do like 400 to 1.
Oh, so this is a real.
He's a real
character who existed in history.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's a very famous samurai, well known for perfecting a two-sword fighting style. So the moments where you sort of see him actually sort of have a sword in each hand, that's historically accurate. He's worth looking up on Wikipedia.
Has he been filmed? Have there been films?
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can find loads of films about Musashi.
Because the original title of this film, I mean, the one we've been mentioning, the Crazy Samurai 400 versus 1, that is the title they've put on the DVD or the key art, the UK poster art or whatever. The title on the film is the original title, which is Crazy Samurai Musashi.
Yeah, but he is sort of a real life sort of character.
Interesting.
Okay, so I'm going to score this a 6 out of 10. Rich, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think as technically accomplished as it is, I need a bit more. I think a 6 is more than enough for see it for the technical accomplishment. But I don't think there's much more there, to be honest.
No,
which is a shame.
Yeah.
Steve?
Well, for the technical accomplishment and the physical accomplishment, I'm going to give it a 4.
Cool. I mean, one final thing, Rich. We've reviewed numerous short films which are basically a fight scene, and we've sort of we've been a bit sort of critical. You say, okay, yeah, this is very technical proficient and a good calling card for these people, but at the same time, from a short film, even we want a little bit more. And really, in my eyes, this has that same problem as those sort of shorts. It's literally just a calling card. There's no real sort of hardly any story here. It's just
you can exactly. Yeah, you can basically, if you take that 77-minute sequence, the unedited sequence, that could have been a 7-minute sequence, and you have the other bit at the beginning and the other bit at the end. It's a short film, and I think you're right. I think it would have been more satisfactory because you do have that story set up, beginning and conclusion, which some short films we've watched don't do that. They just literally throw you in the action, and there's not a lot more, which is particularly unsatisfying. But yeah, I think it is a calling card. I mean, Tak Sakaguchi doesn't need a calling card movie, but it is probably it's a challenging project for him that he's more than risen to on this occasion. But I want to see him in another versus, basically.
Yeah. Anything else, Steve?
No, that's about it.
All right, then. Crazy Samurai gets a 4 and 2 6s from us. Go check it out. Our next film is The Soul Collector. William and Sarah's daughter Mary travel to rural South Africa to the farm that belonged to William's deceased father. There they meet Lazarus, a man cursed with collecting souls, and he has his eyes set on Mary. It's interesting, going into some of these films completely blind as to what it is. And I had no idea this was a South African film until you start hearing the accents and the sort of some of the scenery. At first, actually, I thought it was New Zealand, but no, South Africa. So there's some interesting elements to this, but at the same time, it reminded me a lot of that Chris Smith film that we reviewed a while back.
The Vanishing.
The Vanishing, yeah, it kind of reminded me of that a lot, and so anyway, Steve.
It was okay. It kind of reminded me of like South African Conjuring in a way, but it wasn't the quiet bang type horror movie. It was more introspective in that kind of sense. Also, as well, the main actress looks so much like Vera Farmiga that that was one of the reasons as well with The Conjuring. But it was one of them where you empathize and feel sorry for the predicament that the character's in when it's explained, because again, it kind of throws you in, but it actually does have a decent way of explaining it, and the exposition I thought was actually really good in how they did it with the other villagers kind of explaining his story of what happened to him, and the ending left a little bit of a bad taste. It just didn't really work for me, the ending. That was probably the main thing that let it down for me. But all in all, it wasn't too bad. I thought the performances was great, especially the main
Lazarus.
Yeah, Lazarus. Sorry, I thought he was really good, and even the little girl as well. Because sometimes these films, the kids can be quite annoying, but I thought she was actually really good in this as well. But all in all, yeah, it was definitely watchable.
Rich, what do you make of The Soul Collector?
I thought it's kind of like would you classify this as like folk horror?
Yeah,
in a way, yeah.
It's kind of it's very much sort of about the community and the rituals and stuff. I mean, it's not the Wicker Man, but it's kind of, there's a thing that's happening and the locals know about it and whatnot, and you got this family come in and they get kind of caught up in it. The parents, I felt, I thought they were quite vaguely drawn. They weren't, it's weird because it's almost like they're supposed to be the main characters, but they can't outshine Lazarus. Lazarus is the main character, and you can't kind of get away from that. Every time he sort of goes away, the film sort of droops a bit, and then when he comes back, there's more focus.
Yeah,
I don't know. Certainly the male lead who was I want to say he's the dad, but obviously he's not. But he's kind of the husband. I would say the husband character.
Yeah, stepdad.
There just wasn't. There wasn't a huge amount happening. Oh, was the uncle?
I thought they were married.
An uncle. Yeah, they are. But they've adopted her because her parents died.
Okay.
Right. I thought it was like from a different marriage or something.
No.
Okay.
No, but it's all very well shot, I would say. I mean, yeah, Lazarus, who's Shamano Sebe, is very good. The whole thing about the duffel bag with the demon in was really good. You know, he's walking around with the thing, and then when the you see it in the corner and it's all in dark and the eyes are looking out and stuff, very very well done. You know, really really creepy. I was quite surprised, considering it's a South African movie with black characters and the white landowners and whatnot, that race is not really, apartheid is not a feature of this story as far as I could tell. It did. Sorry.
You see, that was the kind of thing, because the aunt, I think Aunt Sarah, is it? She's like, no, don't trust him, stranger.
Yeah,
that's what I think. I think she's racist, but they don't outwardly
but they
say
don't
it.
out and out. Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
But so I thought that was quite interesting. It sort of steers away from what you think it might do, in some respects, at least from an outsider's perspective. I think it plays quite interesting. It's not like anything that comes to mind, which I quite like. Although I was thinking of things like Candyman, but but even in Candyman, race, and slavery and everything, it's all such a key part of that in the tragedy of the Candyman character. He's the villain, but he's sympathetic to a degree, and we've kind of got that with Lazarus, and obviously he's named. His name is Lazarus, who was raised from the dead and all that sort of stuff. So they got that going on. It lost me at the end. The same with Steve. All the pink sky and whatnot. It was I'll be honest. I didn't understand what was happening, and I was a bit confused and disengaged a bit. And then there's another scene, because you think it's ended, and then there's actually an epilogue scene, which kind of made a little bit more sense. But yeah, I kind of lost it there. I do think it's worth seeing, because I think it's quite interesting, quite novel in a lot of respects. But overall, as the complete package, it just didn't quite work for me as well as some others.
It's interesting that Lazarus is kind of both the protagonist and the antagonist at the same time. He's a sympathetic villain, basically. He's sort of driven to do these things.
Because he is he is a nice guy, isn't he? I mean, he establishes this really nice relationship with the girl, and he seems completely genuine. And he's not trying to be misleading, or trap her into something. But at the same time, he knows he's got to do
at the same
that.
time he does, and there's a bit at the end. As you say, with the pink skies and that, we're in this sort of limbo. And it seemed to me that he was trying to trick her again, because he's sort of saying, well, you can go back, or you can either be with your mum and dad who are here, or you can go back. And I think, well, the mum and dad's, of course, now they just, I got it, I get it now. It's her mum and dad. Because it's her mum and dad, not the other couple. Right, I got it. Yeah, got there in the end. I'll edit this a little bit. But yeah, he's quite a sympathetic character, and she seemed a bit overly precocious in my mind.
Aren't they always?
But she was sort of wise beyond her years kind of character, isn't she? Sort of the girl Mary. There was one bit I really did like, where she's in the bedroom, and she can sort of sense something in the room with her, and she turns around, there's like an empty chair, and then she just turns the mirror so she can see the reflection of the chair, and then that's where you see the girl sat in the chair. I thought that was sort of really well done. But
again, the banishing and stuff we've seen, the whole the girl can see the dead.
That's what I was getting at, and it has a unique setting. It has a unique sort of folklore going on, and sort of, as we said, sort of the villain is quite sympathetic, so this sort of tragic sort of backstory. So there's a lot going on that are positive, but at the same time, I didn't fully engage with this, I must admit. So I'm going to give this one another 6 out of 10. And I'm going to turn to Steve. What are you giving The Soul Collector?
I'll give it a 7. I enjoyed it a bit more than you, I think.
I think you did. And Rich?
I'm going to go a 6 as well, I think, on this one.
Okay. So 2 6s and a 7 for the Soul Collector. Go check it out. Our next film is The Dark and the Wicked. At the behest of their bedridden father's nurse, siblings Michael and Louise return to their parents' farmstead to try and help out, only to be rebuked by their mother. It's not long before a tragedy befalls them, and they discover that their parents have been under siege by a demonic force. I thoroughly enjoyed this one, Rich. I thought the rural farm setting was really, really well done. Incredibly creepy sort of location. That sort of isolation out in the wilderness almost. The stuff with the goats, I thought just worked really, really well. Sort of building up to this, this tragic event that happens, and then, the real sort of creepiness starts to sort of manifest itself. It gets to a point where the brother goes home, and there's a trick. There's a brilliant fake out, which sort of ends up in tragedy. I thought that was really, really well handled, and it's exactly the sort of thing you'd expect this particular sort of, this devil, this demon that's stalking this farmstead. Is exactly the sort of thing you'd expect him to do. I just really, really like this. How do you get on with it?
Well, of the two farm-based horror or farm set horror movies that we've watched this week, this one is the favorite. I agree with you in terms of all the things you said, really, like the settings and the goat, all the stuff with the goats and chopping the vegetables.
Well, we've seen that a lot, haven't we? That sort of thing. I'm going to try and.
Well, I don't know if I've seen it to that extent. Yeah, you do kind of think, oh, I know what's going to happen here, but then it doesn't, and then later it does. There is this kind of ambiguity to why. It's kind of they actually mention it. I think they actually mentioned it at one point. It's like you don't know why they have, you've been picked. It's kind of like evil has decided that it wants you, and there's no sort of rationale that you could understand to why that might be, and there's no way of sort of dealing with it. That's what I took from it anyway. But there's kind of it's kind of this pervasive evil is all around. It's inescapable. I was reminded of two things. So there was like Shadow Builder that we watched a while back, where the people start to sort of go a bit mad from the evil. It just sort of drives them a bit crazy, and stuff's happening. And also the Amityville Horror, the haunted, the evil place, and the thing. So it's not so much a haunted house, but as in more of like a haunted, because it's not haunted, it's like possessed or whatever. But the whole area, it's just it latches on. It's almost like The Grudge. The way it gets hold and won't let you go, and there's one guy who tries to run away, and you just can't run away from it. It goes with you. Yeah, and so exactly. That's very much like what they did in The Grudge.
But, that's right.
We've got it does bring in a lot of conventions, like the Prophet of Doom sort of character, who in this case is the priest who turns up, and played by Xander Berkeley, who I barely recognised because he's got quite old now, or at least he's made to look old. And he's quite creepy, and other characters turn up, and you think they're okay, but actually they're manifestations of the evil. It starts at the beginning, don't you? There's the goats, and then there's somebody you see somebody in the goats or with the goats.
Just really, really
just
quickly,
a flash, just really, really quickly, and something's up, and it's going to get pretty nasty. And there's some pretty graphic. This is a proper horror movie. There's some pretty graphic sequences in there, lots of distress and screaming, and but it's the siblings have come there because their dad is basically on his deathbed, and they actually want to get him out, but they almost they can't, they're trapped, but they don't want, well, at least one of them, doesn't want to leave him, but he is kind of a target of the evil, and he's completely vulnerable, and others are trying to help, and you just can't. You can't fight the darkness.
Indeed, yeah. At least that's what this film seems to be saying. I just, I thought from an atmosphere point of view, it just nails it.
I like the device of the diary that was introduced.
Yes, that
and it's like
well.
the mother's notes and that, because they constantly keep returning to it, and it adds it doesn't add exposition as such as sort of context, and the distress and the madness of the situation.
It's one of the things I did like as well, is the fact the characters don't bullshit each other about what they've seen. It's like, it's like, I saw something, saw something on the porch, and it's like, any other film, a lot of other films have gone, no, it's nothing, or it's just your imagination or something. It's like, no, fuck you. I know exactly what I saw out there. So yeah, just thoroughly enjoyed it. What are you going to score this one, mate?
I think I'll give this one a 7.
Yeah, we're joining on a 7 of this as well. This is directed by the same guy who did The Strangers, which I must admit I haven't seen. I know a lot of people like that sort of home
Brian
invasion
Bertino.
Kind of
Brian Bertino. And also one. What else has he done? Mockingbird and The Monster as well. He's done quite a few.
All right.
But this was the first of his that I've seen. I think The Monster came out like last year or the year before.
The mother and daughter trapped in a car, isn't it? Or the monster. Stalking outside. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So this was on Shudder. It's debuted on Shudder, but it's now getting a DVD and Blu-ray release through Acorn. Acorn.
Is it? Oh.
It's the first of a series of Shudder films that are getting physical media releases through Acorn.
Yep, good to hear. Okay, so 2 7s for The Dark and the Wicked. Go check it out. You back, Steve?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so Witch Hunt. In 5. Our final main review is Witch Hunt. In an alternate version of America, witches and witchcraft are very real, but are outlawed by the government, and the witches hunted and persecuted. High schooler Claire finds herself torn between believing the propaganda taught at school and repeated by her close friends, and the fact that her mother is playing a very dangerous game by helping witches escape to Mexico. Now, every now and again, you come across a film which grabs you from its very first image. As soon as the first image comes up on the screen, you go, yes, this is, you're hooked straight away. I can think of films like I Am Not a Serial Killer, doing exactly that. Another film called Let Her Out, I was exactly the same way. And this, when the film opens and there's a woman tied to a stake with shotguns pointed at her by these people, and it comes up saying, this is New England in the present day. And you're thinking, what the fuck is going on here? Because, I'm sure, like you guys, I hadn't read anything about the film before, hitting play. I thought I was going to be watching something incredibly generic, sort of typical sort of low-budget horror movie that we get. This is something else altogether. I'm going to throw this over to Steve to begin with, and I'll come back in later on.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. You're hooked straight away, and it's very strange. It's tonally, it's quite mild. That's not the word I'm looking for. But then you get these sudden, sharp, disturbing scenes that really drag you back in. If there's a scene about halfway through where they're testing for witchcraft.
Yeah,
which was
dunking in the swimming pool bit. Yeah.
Yeah, because that was really shocking in a way, because it's quite, like I say, it's quite nice and gentle, and you've got the Elizabeth Mitchell in it, who's playing the mum, who's keeping the witches hidden, and it's such an allegory for Trump. The whole film, it really is, but it's just done so well, and it's quite nice, gentle, just trying to keep the witches safe, and then bang, there's something that just really, really throws you, and it's because I'm thinking it's going to be, a 12 or something, but the harrowing scenes that are in it really, really take you out of it, and especially when the like the FBI witch bureau or whatever they're called turn up, and things like that, and all around I thought the performance was great, really well shot. I mean, it's quite, there's not a lot of different places, it's quite you got the house, the bar, the school, that's about it. It's not a wide ranging tale, but you get nice relationship with the girls and things like that, and a nice little twist at the end, and yeah, it really, really dragged me in this. I wasn't expecting to really enjoy this. I thought it would be more like something. What was the one we watched? The Witches one that was supposed to, Witches of Salem or something.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was
Witches
something
of Amityville.
more. That's that one. Yeah, I thought it was more along that kind of lines, but it's not. And it's actually very impressive. Very impressive.
Rich, over to you.
Yeah, as Steve mentioned, and I think you might have mentioned it as well, the whole allegory for Trump's America, which is quite apparent in what the film is trying to say. There's even a wall, it's like if you didn't know, the thing is, it's allegorical, but it's really clear. It's very upfront. It's not hard to decipher this. You know exactly where you stand. I might be wrong in this, but for me, it seems young adult. It's like a YA pitched kind of thing. So everything is, quite easy to figure out. So what I like is that it's Trump's America, but it's also the Holocaust. It's got it's doing some quite incredible, quite bold stuff here in linking those two things of saying that is it whether that you can read the witches as Muslims or Jews, LGBT or whatever it is. So it could be Jews as well. So you got, because they're the witches are being transported on an underground railroad. They're hiding in the walls. They're being hunted by say these witch hunters who are basically the government, but they're quite the costume design is quite interesting because they're wearing suits, but they're made to look like Puritans. In my view, that was how I read it. So this is kind of that alternative reality of where that's kind of come from. There's not a huge amount of world building here. As Steve says, it's very narrowly focused. There's not a lot of locations. We don't have like a Tomorrow War kind of news in montage exposition of why witchcraft's been banned and all the backstory and everything. It's left to the side. The other interesting thing, I think, is that it's a very, naturally because of the witches, but it's a very female-focused story to the extent that there's barely any male characters in it. There's like two, but considering this is a teen movie, essentially, it's a movie about teenage girls. There's no boyfriends around at all in this. There's no talk of boys really.
No, there is. Kind of, but no, yeah.
Well, them marginally. But not to any extent. There's no romance.
For the main character, no.
No.
So not conventionally.
No, but it's about female relationships, and then they evoke things like Thelma and Louise, which comes up a couple of times. The cover actually, and I didn't look at the poster sort of pitch line that's on the UK artwork. I didn't actually look at that until after I'd seen the film,
Right.
but I do see where they're coming from, because when I was watching it, I was thinking of Handmaid's Tale and stuff. And when and what they've said on the front is Carrie meets Handmaid's Tale, which I think is painting it quite broadly.
That's quite
but I do
broad.
see where I do see where they're coming from, though, because there is that sort of teenage girl powers, and ostracism, and the Handmaid's Tale kind of thing. I don't know a huge amount about the Handmaid's Tale, because I know that it's a big successful TV series now and whatnot, but the central concept of it I was familiar with. But I thought this was really, really good.
I kind of disagree with you two about the world building. I think it does enough. There's little bits like
I think it did. I think it did enough, but I just think they didn't over-egg it. They weren't doing a big thing about it.
No, exactly. And one of the things you don't get is one of the tropes I hate, which is the exposition by news stories. I think there is a little bit. You hear a bit of sort of narration from the radio or something at one point. That's about it. There's it's a YouTube clip they're sharing of a witch being shot with salt as she tries to escape to the border. The wall that you mentioned has a line of salt going around it, which is because it disrupts their sort of magic and that sort of thing. The testing for witches thing. Which happens at the school, where basically, they're sort of chained to a chair and thrown into the swimming pool to see if they float.
And this is an entirely acceptable thing that they're grown up with. They're used to it.
Exactly, they've all done it. And basically this is a repeat. Apparently, they've been made to do it again. These particular ones. So there's all that going on, which I thought was really good. The whole thing about Proposition 6. As well, there's another clip that she listens to on sort of podcast or whatever, where someone's sort of saying that her sister had been killed in a car accident, and the person driving the car was the daughter of a witch, and if Proposition 6 went through, then she would have been not allowed to drive in the first place. So there's that sort of tugging at the heartstrings sort of thing, typical sort of thing that goes on.
Well, there's also at the very beginning, when you go into the classroom, it's like things written on the boards and stuff. It's all there in the background for you to pick up. There's little breadcrumbs.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a really good villain as well. I don't think the character's actually named in the film, but he is played by Christian Camargo. He's he's the child snatcher, isn't he? This sort of character. Yeah. He's Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Basterds.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly who I thought of.
Yeah, and he does it really well. He's that sort of that sort of calm demeanor, but he's calm but menacing at the same time. Just missing sort of a full length leather trench coat to finish the look. But other than that, it's really, really good. Yeah, I just thoroughly enjoyed this. I love the allegory that it was pushing. I think it's a great sort of message film for young adults to check out, and for them to sort of join the dots between the fantasy and the real world. I think it's really, really good.
I also like seeing Elizabeth Mitchell from Lost, and obviously she's done loads of other stuff as well, but that's what I mainly know her from.
Sure.
So she's because this isn't a film with loads of recognizable star actors in it, as far as I could tell. It's a bit like most of the films actually we've covered this week. It's not a star-led film, but there is that recognizable
There's
anchor.
no Anthony Hopkins or Dustin Hoffman sort of popping up.
No.
Okay, scores on the doors for Witch Hunt. Steve?
I'm going to go on 8.
And Rich?
Yes, an 8 from me.
And an 8 for me. This is a stonking film. We highly recommend it. It's just really, really good. End of. Our short shot this week is Dr. B's Returns. The superhero Dr. Bees returns to help the police defeat the Comforter, a supervillain who makes his victims relaxed, comfortable, and devoid of bees. Rich, what the fuck is this, mate? What is this? So, let's expand this a little bit. This is actually one of 3 shorts about Dr. Bees, who is a wasp-based superhero by day, and then his alter ego is another superhero called Dr. Bees, who wears a beehive around his waist and basically throws bees at people. Right. It's any situation is fixed by an influx of bees, as far as he's concerned. It is very well done. It does feel like something which should be on Adult Swim. It's a very sort of absurdist sort of sense of humor to it.
Yes.
Yeah. It is quite amusing. So, Steve, how the hell did you get on with this?
Yeah, it's off its tits. It reminded me of years ago on MTV, it was something called Liquid Television.
Right. Yeah.
It was kind of like where Aeon Flux came from, and the sketch and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of something. It should have been on that with them. You know what I mean? It's absolutely absurd humor. It's like a 60s Batman as well, tinge to it. It's just, you can't describe it. It's just off its head. It's hilarious. It's funny. It's great, but it does make no sense. I mean, did you watch the other 2 as well?
Of course, yeah. How could I not? Yeah.
I mean, my son walks in, he's like, what is this?
Dr. Bees.
Dr. Bees.
So presumably, Rich, you had seen one of the previous films before, because
yes.
As soon as this hit, you're like, can we do this? Can we do an animation?
Yeah.
So
I was excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an animator called Harry Partridge. He's essentially a one-man band for the most part, and that's why his films generally take quite a long time to come out. So the first Dr. Bees cartoon was only 2 minutes long. That was back in 2013, and then there was a second one, I think, like a year later, also about 2 minutes. And now he's back with a 7-minute one with an actual story almost in it.
Yeah.
And well, it is a story. It's got a proper story, and I just think it's great. I mean, the start. Firstly, the animation I really relate to. I think it's very well done. Very 1980s sort of cartoon. And if you go back and watch some of his earlier stuff, he's clearly very influenced by the 80s cartoons, your He-Mans and all that sort of stuff. There's one he did called Saturday Morning Watchman, which is a perfect evocation of what if Watchmen was around in the 80s and they decided to do a TV spin-off, what it would have been like. It's so perfectly pitched. I mean, it's got all the references from the comic book and everything, but in terms of the style, it matches Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all that stuff that was coming out. It's hilarious, and it takes the form of an opening title sequence. So if you haven't seen that, you definitely have to. He also did one called Bow Star, which is a parody of He-Man, and that was also making his work brings to mind an old CITV series called Round the Bend, where they used to do little parodies of things like He-Man and stuff. Do you remember that, Steve?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was mad. It was set in a sewer, weren't it?
Yeah, that's right. But it had these little cutaways to like little sequences and stuff. And I mean, there's other things as well. But I also think there's a healthy dose of Monty Python in the sheer absurdity of it all. I'm not going to mention any of the jokes because they're you have to see it. But I just think it's pretty much perfect in terms of just watching 7 minutes of something to make you chuckle.
It's certainly different. Yeah, I think my favourite one was actually the second one. But yeah, I did like the sort of the Adam West Batman pastiche of the last one. I thought
And the
it was
bee,
quite-
the
yeah.
that sort of bit coming in. And they've got to change the comic. They've got to change the comic because they don't want a woman
That's the one I like.
stung by a bee.
Yeah.
And they go,
Yeah.
no, you can't change this by adding more bees. What is this strange situation? Which is absolutely fine, but
It's just like really,
there's
really
an absence
bizarre
of bees.
shit. Like in the first one as well, where he's like, he comes across somebody having a picnic, and the things they're eating is like an eyeball, a dead rat, and a placenta or something.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous. It's
Yeah,
just
and
like,
all his stuff's like that.
yeah.
You should
Crazy,
see
crazy.
Starbarians. That's
Right.
it's very like you say. I think you're right. Like Adult Swim kind of thing. This is it's not for kids. There's like F words and stuff in it. For the most part, it looks completely innocuous. And then you get in, it's like some of it's like really dark and twisted.
Yeah.
I just love all the ideas that he explores.
Yeah, no, it's very good, and from the sounds of it, this is a gateway into the world of what's his name, Harry
Partridge.
Harry Partridge. Yeah. So yeah, we'll put the link to. I think we'll put the link to all three of these, the Dr. Bees films, into the footnotes for people to check out, and go check out his other works as well. It sounds very bizarre. Our DTV throwback this week is Collision. Newlyweds Scott and Taylor Dolan are on their honeymoon in Morocco. When on a day excursion in their Land Rover, they are harassed by a stranger who chases them across the desert until both cars are involved in a horrific accident with two other vehicles. As the survivors of the crash try to work out what to do, it comes to light that not everyone is who they claim to be. This is a hot mess, guys. It really is. It's a very interesting hot mess, but it is nevertheless a hot mess. And it's not helped, unfortunately, by Amazon Prime not putting the English subtitles, as a lot of the film is not in English.
There's like three major scenes that really did need subtitles and should have had subtitles. Especially towards the end.
Yeah. And it's not a case of like, oh, they don't want us to know what was happening. I could understand that if, like, for example, Frank Grillo was on the screen and there's two people talking a different language, and you go, I wonder what they're saying. But this is like two characters who are on screen together, and they're the only two characters on the screen having a conversation.
That's when I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
Earlier, it was, I'm sure it's just a short scene. You're not supposed to understand because they're in an alien, strange land.
I don't want you to know what is going on just yet.
No.
Yeah. So, Steve, Collision
didn't stick with me, to be fair. I found it quite not boring, but just a bit predictable. Everyone's. It was basically down to the characters. I thought they were just so unlikable because everyone's basically double crossing someone, or not being what they said they were, or trying to do this and do that, and it just it didn't sit well with me at all. Especially when you've got Frank Grillo, who's I like Frank Grillo. He's all right, but he's such a smarty twat in this. And Jamie Alexander, love her, especially like in the Thor films, and like especially in Loki this week. Again, the characters are just awful people, and I couldn't care less what happened to him. Basically, it was just one of them, and it's like something like Open Water or Great White, where the solution's there, but it takes them 2 days to figure it out when they could have done it in 20 minutes, half an hour, and got out of there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I wasn't impressed with this one, to be fair.
Rich, you recommended this one. What do you make of it?
Well, I thought it would be interesting.
When they say you recommended it, I mean,
I suggested it because it's a Frank Grillo movie, and I thought it looked quite interesting. The Luc Besson produced it. It was shot in Morocco. the cinematography and everything's really good. It's very sort of it's not quite a survival story, but there obviously is that element because they're trapped in the middle of nowhere or whatever. The crash when it happens is horrific. It's spectacularly it's awful at the same time because it's like they're speeding along and then just over the hill, there's just some people like broken down or whatever and just smack straight into them. It is horrific. But a problem with now, Steve's already mentioned, the characters are just really, really unlikable.
Yep.
And there's no one to really root for because Frank Grillo is kind of the hero, but he's not a nice character, and basically he's responsible for everything to an extent.
Yeah.
So he's no better than the others. In fact, he's probably worse in the final analysis. The way it ends, I wasn't really that keen on the end, which was kind of, oh, okay. It's like, am I supposed to respect this guy?
I know it. And what was weird
there's the whole thing about...
Yeah. What was weird about that ending as well is because, by that point, there are two different story threads going on. There's the thing with the baby and the thing with Frank Grillo and his wife. And the, the way the baby thing ends, it comes out okay. But the character sort of sees Frank Grillo's, character and he's sort of going, so you've sorted out your loose end as well. Good on you, sort of thing. And I think, surely no, that's not the message the film should be saying. Or it's like he's enabling the fact that he's done this thing at the end.
Yeah. So they're all it's a bunch of nasty people doing nasty stuff to each other, basically. It's almost coincidentally so. It's like, what are the chances this amount of nasty people get across their orbit? The other title it's known by is Intersections, and it's all about people crossing paths and stuff. And the initial setup is Frank Grillo's wife is trying to get one over on him, basically, and will she get away with it? Frank Grillo is not the Frank Grillo that we are used to. He's
clean shaven for a start.
He's he's very much against the type for which he is known now. Sort of that rugged kind of character. Here he's playing like a suit. He's like a wealthy guy who works with investment banking or something, and he's wears expensive watches and can afford to just fly on a helicopter to the middle of nowhere in Morocco and stay at this luxury hotel. So it's not the Grillo we know and love, I would say. It's interesting to see him in a different kind of role, but he's almost... It's a bland role, if you see what I mean, for him, compared to what we like the larger than life sort of Grillo, I think, from, Wolf Warrior 2 and everything. I haven't seen The Purge, by the way. I think is he in the original Purge, or is he just in the sequel?
He's in 2 and 3. Yeah, he's in 2 and 3,
So, the cast is quite interesting because it's an international sort of film. So you've got the Americans, but you've also got, and I'm going to get his name wrong, Rojdi Zem, who's I think he's French Algerian, but he's he does a lot of. He did Point Blank, which is an excellent film.
French film,
the original one. Now that's actually interesting. I've actually thought about this because Frank Grillo was in the remake of Point Blank, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah.
So you got the guy who was in the original one and the guy who was in the remake, are both in this. I didn't realise.
Was that the Jamie Foxx one?
Yes.
Yeah, because I remember we did the remake. We reviewed the remake. Yeah. It was shy.
Jamie Foxx was in it.
Yeah, Jamie Foxx was
in the remake.
Jamie Foxx was the male nurse.
No, that was what's his name from Outside the Wire.
Jamie Foxx was the cop then. No,
might have been. I don't know, but
I'm
sure
he was in it.
Anyway,
I'll fix this in post. Don't worry.
No, you're right. It's quite fun. So this is directed by David Marconi, who's only had one directorial credit to his name, but he is a well-established screenwriter. Did films like Enemy of the State. I think he does a reasonable job with the film. I think the film in terms of the way it's put together and directed, and you know, the plot beats and the you know, the cinematography and the music and everything is all really solid. But I can understand why it went direct to video, because I just don't think there's, you know, the characters just you know, the story, the problem is the story, you know, it's that's the crux of it, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's there's no one really to root for at all, you know, because you know, he could sort of look at Frank Grillo's character and think, well, you know, he's been set up by his wife, who's a like femme fatale kind of thing, so you should be going for him. But he's just such a dick. He's like an even worse version of Philip Winchester's character in Endangered Species that we covered last week. You know, just this really sort of stupidly hard-headed sort of guy who thinks he knows everything, and he kind of does, but you know, he's bloody smarmy about it as well.
There's definitely a similar kind of vibe to this and that, you know, in that design. In terms, if he'd had the family with him, you'd have had basically the same concept. Yeah,
I mean, eventually, sort of like a sort of slightly morally upright person does sort of emerge from this, but it takes a long time to get there before that's sort of revealed. You know, and before you get there, there's just some real nasty sort of misogyny and just you know, really ugly characters going on. It's a bit of a mess. And as we've mentioned, you know, we end up being left further in the dark than we should be, because we don't, you know, we're missing the details of these conversations. There's a whole thing with diamonds that's, you know, they find, and there's conversations about that, even though we don't actually know the specifics. You know, there's a lot going on, and well,
you got these Moroccan characters having. There's a Moroccan, the bad guy. He does speak some English, but he has some dialogue scenes. You know, he's like the psycho. Yeah. He's like, I think he's like being a prisoner transfer or something, and he got away.
Yeah.
He's an interesting character, but some of them sort of get knocked off. En route, you know, as the plot develops and stuff, and it's a shame. But I do think I think if you're a Grillo completist, it's probably worth seeing. And if you like, you know, some of the other people, I mean, it's shot on location in Morocco, and it all looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, cinematography and everything is superb. The settings work really well. It's just.
Maybe see if you can get a DVD with subtitles.
Yeah, exactly. You know, pick one up. But we don't score them. This is available on Amazon Prime. We don't score the throwbacks, but it's there for you to check out. You know, maybe we've intrigued you a little bit by this one.
Maybe you want a little bit of David Gray in your life.
Maybe you do.
Yeah, that was a weird one. That. I'm sorry. I forgot all about that, but not just
random music selection.
Yeah, because it just didn't fit the scene at all. It was, I don't know.
It's weird. Yeah, so some interesting choices going on in this.
Yeah,
for sure. But anyway, there it is. It's on Prime. I'll put the link in the footnotes. Go check it out. And that is the end of this week's show. So thanks to Rich and Steve for staying with me and talking about a much better selection of films than we've had of late, I think. I think this sort of standard was sort of pretty high here. Definitely with Witch Hunt at the fore. That definitely sort of impressed us. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter at the DTV Digest. Also check out our sister show, the DTV Digest Short Shots. Other than that, thank you for listening and tune in next time.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tune in again next time.